Hey podcast listeners, welcome to What You're Reading, the podcast where I connect with fellow book enthusiasts to chat about our latest reads, the topics that fuel our bookish obsession, and all those things that keep us glued to those pages. In today's episode, I am bringing back one of my book besties, Brittany. You guys have heard her on the podcast quite a few times by now, whether the dedicated episode that we had together talking about our holiday reads or in any of our buddy read discussions from our recorded book club episodes. Today, I really wanted to sit down and talk to Brittany about how we make time for reading. So a little bit of context, Brittany and I are both in the event planning industry. I work more so with businesses and on a very rare occasion, some wedding clients. Brittany works on the corporate level, does a lot of huge conferences and trade shows. Her schedule is very unpredictable. There will be times where she will be on an event site from a couple of days to 3 weeks. So I really wanted to bring her in here and sit down and talk about how we kind of make time for reading when we have these busy event schedules. I see a lot of people wishing that they could figure out how to fit in more reading into their daily lives. So as two people with pretty unpredictable and busy schedules, I wanted to sit down and just have this conversation to give you guys some insight and some tips as to how we plan for busy seasons, how we've kind of learned what works for us and what doesn't in those seasons so that we can keep up with our reading, because those are the things that are self-care for us. We enjoy them. They either relax us, they help us decompress, and are just a great time. Also want to keep in note that this episode was recorded in December of 2023. So when you hear us referring to last year, we're actually referring to 2022 and not 2023. Okay, guys, let's get into it. Before we get into our pre-discussion today, just want to let you guys know that today we're going to be chatting about making time for reading. One of the questions that I get a lot on Instagram or when I'm just talking to like friends and family is like, how do you read so much? And when I was thinking about that, I knew I had to bring Brittany on here. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but Brittany has an insanely busy schedule. And I think last year we almost read about the same amount of books. I think, Brittany, you were in the 85-ish range of books that you were able to read last year. And I think that was around the same that I was. So I just wanted to bring her in here so we can kind of talk about like what that looks like, how we can accomplish that, and maybe give you guys some tips so that you can maybe release some of the pressure on what reading looks like. And you can enjoy more books throughout your year. But before we get to that, Brittany, what are you currently reading?
I am currently reading The Dance of the Dolls by Lucy Ashe. It is a historical fiction piece that takes place in 1933 London. It is a psychological thriller, and it's about two identical twin ballet dancers. They have an obsession, obviously, with dancing, and there's a little bit of spooky going on. I'm still in the middle of reading it, and I don't want to get too many spoilers from the synopsis, so I feel like when I look at a book and commit to it, I don't read through the synopsis that much, but something dark happens. I'm getting really kind of like they live in the theater. It's very dark ballet vibes. I don't want to say like Black Swan, but that's kind of what just I don't think so, because I honestly think that they are two different people. I think that they're truly characters, but I do think that there's something weird and dark and sinister that happened to these two people. So,
yeah, that sounds good.
Yes, I'm super excited. I'm loving it. So
I just read I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast Was Me. That is by Jameson Shea, and that was a ballerina story, and that one gave me major Black Swan vibes. Like, it's like I was listening to it, this one though, that one was set in Paris, but I was listening to it and I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me so much. Like, I'm gonna have to pull up the movie and watch the movie because it reminded me so much of Black Swan. There were definitely like lots of like sinister things going on in this one, and this isn't a spoiler. She like is a ballerina, and she makes a deal with like a like dark being, so that she can get like favor and power and, all of these different things. But like, then she's dealing with like maybe some of the consequences or, the repercussions of it. And it was just so good. And I just remembered like, it really gave me like Black Swan vibes.
Oh my goodness. I have to add that to my TBR because I feel like I could be potentially on a ballerina kick. So yeah, that.
And it's like shady, like there are other shady ballerinas who are like doing things to like sabotage each other. Like it was really good. So that what made me think of that. So yeah, we'll definitely have to follow back up and you'll have to let us know with that. So, okay. So that's what you're currently reading. Tell us about one of your like something that you like recently finished.
Recently finished Biting the Hand, Growing Up Asian in a Black and White America by Julia Lee. And that was our book club read for this month. And
yes.
It was more than 5 stars for me. I've really enjoyed this book. It's a nonfiction piece, in an autobiography on the author, Julia Lee, and she's Korean American. It's just her point of view and her experience, throughout her life in being Korean American. And there's not enough that I can say positive about this book. But it was also fascinating because I do feel like, so the title, in the title, it says Growing Up Asian in a Black and White America. And I do feel like the point of view of an Asian American is never, it's never elevated or amplified. We don't really see it a whole lot. We don't read it a whole lot. And I don't want to say forgotten about, but a little bit. So it was great to see her point of view on everything and her lived experience, because a lot of the stuff that she was talking about, a lot of the history of her family, her parents were immigrants from Korea. So a lot of the stuff that they went through, a little of the reflections and the consequences of what happened during the Korean War, all of that was it was amazing. I've really enjoyed this book.
I agree. We all loved that book. And yeah, I agree. 10 out of 10, recommend. Go get it. Go read it. But we're going to go ahead and move into our main subject or topic for today, and that is making more time for reading, how to fit the reading in. As I stated earlier, Brittany and I both read in 2022 upwards of 80 books. And there are people who absolutely read more than that. I follow quite a few people who are reading, 150, 200 books a year. And I see a lot of people have interesting discussions about like, oh, you're lying, or that can't be true. Like, oh, you must not be reading real books, or, whatever. So I just want to start this episode by saying audiobooks count as reading. Okay. I'm not going to get into the whys of that or why we believe that. But if you believe that you do not count your audiobooks as reading, right? You're still consuming the content. High school you would have loved an audiobook option because you still would have been able to pass that test, right? So if you believe that does not count, then this might not be the episode for you. I can say most of my reading from last year was probably evenly split. I probably did half and half audio, half physical read, whether it was a physical book or on the Kindle. So even still, that's still more than the average person reads a year. But I just want to put out that disclaimer because that is, we consume all formats here, and we believe that all formats are acceptable. So moving right into it, Brittany, if you want to give us a little bit of like, what is your typical like work schedule looking like?
My work schedule is all over the place. It is, I'm very event based. So, I work trade shows and corporate events, and I travel a lot for work. I will typically be working an event, physically in person for a week to, 1 to 3 weeks at a time. And so, I could be traveling, I could be, physically in Vegas. But then some weeks I will be just working from home. So it depends. I am all over the place with that. So the most consistent thing is that my work schedule is very inconsistent.
And I just want to emphasize here that like we're talking about like periods of time. Like there have been like where it's been like, I think we both kind of left around the same time for an event in April, and I came back and then I left again on a trip and came back, and it was like end of May and Brittany was still not back. Like you were still gone. So just really want to emphasize, like, we're not talking like just like 16-hour days for 5 days a week. Like we're talking about nonstop for a couple of weeks and still being able to fit in both audio and physical reading during that. So when you're away working these shows, I assume you're more audio heavy on your books, correct?
Correct. Yes. I do a lot of audio. They are mostly skewed towards the rom-com, so they can be light and fluffy. I don't have to concentrate. But I mostly read on the plane. I'll read my Kindle on the plane. And then there are times before bed, sometimes that I'll be able to like read in the evening. It depends on how long my days are. If I'm pushing a 17-hour, 18, 19-hour workday, then I'm just crashing. But sometimes I will read at night before bed.
Yeah. And so like, and I know like, I feel like some people could be like, well, why not read? But like reading is definitely relaxing for you. I assume it's, something that you want to make a priority for. So how do you figure out, like, are you loading books up so that you have an opportunity to just go through them, like done with one, here's another one? Or are you kind of like figuring it out as you go?
I feel like I look ahead for a little bit. So like I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, what do I have coming up kind of like this month? And if I'm going to be out. So if I know that I'm going to go out on a trip soon, then I will load up my Kindle with like 2 options. I'll know like these are the books or, book or 2 books that I'm going to read on my Kindle while I'm gone. And then when I'm at home, I do have a physical TBR, like I have a book cart. So then when I'm home for a stretch, I have my book cart and I'm like, okay, I need to knock through these physical copies for this small section of time that I'm actually home.
And then what, like, so as you're going through your day, and I know you kind of mentioned this earlier, but like, tell me more about like the type of book that you can listen to and also work. Like, what are those books that you're leaning? Are they always only romance, or are there other things that you can kind of throw in there too?
Audio on a work day, it's mostly romance because, I needed like a light and fluffy romance, something that I didn't miss. Like I can't do a mystery or something that I need to focus on the details of. Sometimes I'll do a nonfiction or like an audiobook. A memoir is really great sometimes for when I'm gone. But I do find myself rewinding a lot because if I miss something that, like memoirs, I'm so interested and invested in. If I miss something, then I'll rewind. But sometimes I'm so interested that it doesn't matter if I have to rewind a little bit. So rom-coms or memoirs are kind of my go-to when I'm out.
Your go-to. Do you have any like top memoir suggestions, like for someone who's like, okay, like I have a busy week coming up, whether it's work or whatever, and I would love to be able to knock out a book this week or a memoir this week? Like, what have been some of like the ones that you've worked to, like that you feel like are really good to where you can listen and still digest, but also get work?
Viola Davis was really great. I just got done listening to that on a show that I was on and again, I was really invested in her story. So I would never say that this was a light and fluffy read by any means. But it was still really great and fascinating. Alicia Keys was great on audio. Her story was on the lighter side, like it wasn't too intense. and she's playing the piano while she reads it. She's like tinkering, but Alicia Keys tinkering on the piano while she reads is phenomenal. And then I would say, same like Mariah Carey too, would be like a nice lighter memoir. She sings a little bit on the track she had like on the audio, so it's good too.
Yes, I second. I haven't read the other ones, but I second that Mariah Carey. I think that would be a really, really good one to listen to while you're reading, especially if you grew up listening to Mariah Carey. Like, you kind of know some of the history, some of the background, and some of the things. So it's kind of like you're re-listening or like being reminded of some of these things, and then she's filling in the gaps. So I think that would be a really, really good one to listen to as well. So while you're there and working, again, on your shows and stuff, or traveling, do you find it like hard to fit this in, or have you just been doing it so often now that it kind of is like seamless? Like, what would you tell someone who's trying to like find their footing here?
I do feel like at this point it's seamless for me now, but it's like a great relief to get my mind off of working so intensely. So I would say that it's more of that. So it's great to have kind of something to like distract myself after a long day at work, or even sometimes when I have my earbuds while I'm working. Like, sometimes I'm either sitting stationary or I'm, at lunch or something on a really stressful day. It really does help to unwind and kind of remove my mind a little bit so that I can continue on about the day. So advice that I would give to someone is just kind of like, whatever you're comfortable with, like, no pressure on getting your reading done. The reason that I read while I'm out is kind of to relax my mind. So whatever you feel more comfortable with, like at the end of the night, I need kind of like a routine. So I need to have a specific audio when I'm in the airport. I need to have a specific book that I'm reading, that I've committed to reading while I'm on the plane. Then every evening, like, I kind of have a wind down routine at the end of the night. I shower, then I get in bed, I read my book for a little bit, then I go to sleep. Like, I need to have kind of like a routine. So my recommendation is like, whatever routine you can put in place will kind of like streamline and like allow for that to be a smooth process. And then I do have my reading routine while I'm home too.
Right. No, I think the routine part is really important. And I think that's kind of like key, where a lot of people that are looking to increase their reading or looking to get back into their reading, like, I think that's the one thing that they miss, is they're like trying to wait for this moment where they're just all of a sudden going to have hours to sit and read. And it's going to be like, oh my God, this would be a great time to read. Like, and realistically, for people who are busy, who have busy schedules, and, Brittany, neither one of us have children, but we still have very busy schedules with, work, family, and extra things that we do. It's being intentional about the reading, and that's where that routine comes in. Knowing my alarm's gonna go off at 5:50. I've got 10 to 15 minutes to snooze if I want to get my reading in, so that by 7:00 I'm up and moving and getting ready for my day. I have a lunch hour, and I'm going to go ahead and step away from my desk and read for my hour, 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever it is. I have a commute. I need to drive, getting on an airplane, like whatever that is, like having the foresight to like think about those things and to plan out, like, I am going to read during this pocket of time, is really what helps. And like you said, like before going to bed, it definitely helps. Actually, I'm not sure that it helps me when I go to bed, because I never go to bed on time when I'm reading before bed. Like it's always like, okay, I'm going to read till 11, and then it's like 12:30, and I'm like, you have to go to sleep. Like, you really do need to go to sleep. So I don't know, like, it's fun to do, but I don't know if it's like actually quote unquote relaxing me, because I'm so into it. I personally don't watch a ton of TV, but you also make time for TV too. And so I know I see a lot of people online saying like, well, if you just give up your TV time, then you you can make time for books. And for some people like myself, that's realistic because I don't watch a ton of TV. But for you're able to keep up on at least the shows that you want to keep up on and also read substantially. And like I said, I think it's all due in part to the way that you're intentional about using your time throughout the day.
I would say there are a handful of shows that I have that I watch, but I'll watch like those one or two shows and then it's kind of like I'll switch to the book because a lot of the TV shows that I like to watch are reruns. Like I can watch Living Single over and over and over. But then there's like, if I'm binging that at night, I'm like, I've seen this a million times. Like, there's no need for me to watch Living Single for 4 hours this evening. Like, I can watch one episode and then like switch to the book.
Call it a night.
Yeah, call it a night. So, yeah, I do watch my TV, but the books have been taking my focus lately.
Okay. No, and I think that shows again, like the progression and like where your interests lie. And I think a lot of that has to do with one, knowing yourself as a reader, like what you like, what you don't like, what you're interested in. I'm a heavy mood reader. So if I'm in the mood for a fantasy and I'm trying to read a mystery, like it's going to be painful because it's just not going to happen. Like I'm not going to be into this. So knowing those things about yourself, knowing like, this is a slow paced book, so it's going to take me time to get into it. And I have like the mental capacity to do that versus I need something quick and to the point. Very low entry. I don't have the mental capacity to figure out your fantasy world and the magic system and the rules. Like I think once you start learning those things about yourself, then you can really figure out like what books are best for you to read. So with that in mind, for maybe, you can give a couple of different specific suggestions of some books, maybe that would be great for people with busy schedules to kind of, start picking up to kind of maybe help them get into that reading habit and building a reading routine.
Jasmine Guillory's catalog was so fun. It was a great, like, light and fluffy read. So I do feel like that was all of her books were great for just something quick, something light. The audio, like the narrators on them were all amazing. The first one I would start off with is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. And then from there, they're all standalone rom-coms, but they do have intertwining characters. So I would highly recommend that. Hello Stranger was a great easy read.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Catherine Center. Yes.
Center. Mm-hmm. That was a great easy read.
I do want to note Jasmine Guillory, that first one at least was on the spice level, was you got yourself a couple of chili peppers there.
Yes, I feel like almost all of them have a decent amount of spice. Yes, there's no closed door in there at all.
And I say that because Catherine Center is very, is there even a door? Like, the door might not even exist because, like, there is some kissing and that's about it. Like, that's where it starts and stops. Like, things don't get really heavy. So, just know if that's what you like or don't like, but just want to mention that I don't want anyone who's looking for a spicy romance book like J.L. Sears book and they pick up a Catherine Center and they're like, what the heck is this? It's not going to have that in it. So just, they're light, they're fluffy, they're great. I enjoyed it. I feel like she leans a little bit more women's fiction with a romance subplot. Yes. But I still find I have a good time with her books.
Yes. And I feel like one of the great series that we had in common in loving was the Bridgerton and Julia Quinn. I inhaled those books. That was so quick. I feel like I read all, 8 of them, 9 of them in like a month and a half. It was so great. I was out traveling during that time.
Yeah, those were easy.
Yes.
Again, easy to digest, easy to get into, low stakes, low, there's going to be a happily ever after. They've got some spice to them. They've got some of the later ones had quite a bit of spice to them. And they were just, they were fun. I think another really great series, and you guys are going to get so tired over the series of this podcast of me saying this lady's name, but Beverly Jenkins has a great series, the Destiny series. It's 3 books, and it starts with Destiny's Embrace. The second book is Destiny's Surrender, and the third book is Destiny's Captive. And we're following 3 brothers in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I can't remember which. They are Black and Spanish descent, and it follows their love stories. And they're just such great books. Easy to read. I think I finished those like within 48 to 72 hours for each of them. I don't know what it is about Beverly Jenkins that makes her books so easy to digest, but it's also like so heavily entwined with history, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. And just a couple of like other like quick ones that I think would be really easy to follow, and like they're not as long. I listened to TJ Newman's Falling on audio. It's like a hijack plane situation. I do want to say it's probably not the best thing to listen to if you're about to get onto an airplane or do any traveling like I did, and was like looking at the flight attendant sideways because I just listened to this thriller book. But I think something like that, and I know she has another one, would be probably really, really good to listen to and or read. I don't think the plot was too hard to follow, so that you'd be able to, do that while you're also working or doing dishes or getting kids ready or, any of that would probably be great. So yeah, really just knowing yourself and sticking to, I guess I could call them like low stake books, maybe not getting into something heavy fantasy when you're in like a really busy season. Probably need to stick to something light, fluffy, memoir, something that I'm probably going to start within the next couple of days, the Britney Spears memoir, things like that, I think are probably going to be like your safe thing. Even some YA books, might be really great for you to check out during busy seasons, or as you're trying to just build a routine for reading, trying to fit it into pockets. Like some of those books are really, really great entry level books to help you along. Okay, Britt, we are going to finish up here. I have a couple of just rapid fire questions that I want to ask you, but what is your top reading genre?
I think it has to be rom-com. I wanted to say something else more profound, like I love a good nonfiction.
It's okay. We're all honest here. We might love nonfiction. That just might not be our top, right? It's okay.
Yeah, the amount of nonfiction that I'm reading, there's no way that I could say something specific.
Okay, so in that, what's your favorite trope within the rom-com?
I would say probably like forced proximity. Enemies to lovers.
I feel like enemies to lovers is a really, really popular one. Forced proximity happens a lot. In them, I'm thinking specifically of what was Mia Sosa's book? The Worst Best Man.
Oh my God, The Worst Best Man.
Oh, I haven't read Wedding Crashers yet. Does that happen in Wedding Crashers too? Is there forced proximity?
No, Wedding Crashers, I feel like was fake dating trope.
What is a bookish pet peeve of yours?
Miscommunications. Because I feel like they're never anything big enough to be upset about like half the time, especially in my rom-com genre. There's always some miscommunication. I'm like, all you had to do was say one sentence and this wouldn't even be an issue. This wouldn't have been a fight. This wouldn't have been a breakup.
I agree. That and like, not necessarily lying, but like when they're withholding the truth, it's like they're gonna find out.
Yes,
they're gonna find out. We could avoid so much here if you would just speak. What is a book that you are excited to pick up next?
I think I am excited for Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. I really want to see how everything was for her from her point of view, what she has to say. Like, she definitely deserves finally to be heard. So I look forward to it. I wasn't a huge fan, but I'm here to support.
I agree. Britney Spears was my first concert. I don't know if I can say like I was a huge
huge fan. I think I actually have like a whole stack of roughly 16 books sitting next to me right now. And this is what I'm excited to read next. Like, just pick one. At the top, it's Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapero. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's a vampire book, one of my fall books that I didn't get to. So honestly, I'm excited to really just hunker down and get through some of my physical TBR stack. All right. Well, thank you, Britt, so much for joining us. If anyone wants to chat with you more about any of your book suggestions, or maybe give you a suggestion, or just connect with you, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at Britt.Kirkland, BITT.Kirkland.
Thanks, guys, so much for joining us. All the links are going to be in the show note to anything that we mentioned today, as well as all of our books. Come join us over on Instagram, which is where we pretty much hang out. I'll have some polls and things up for other people to give some suggestions, as well as book recs for you to kind of, help you along your reading journey and build a stronger reading habit. So again, don't focus too much on the number, focus on the habit, and the numbers will absolutely happen organically. Until next time, bye.
Hey, one last thing before you go. Are you looking for a group to read and chat about books with? If so, I'd love to invite you to join us on our current buddy read of Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. We'll be having a virtual meetup to discuss this book of poetry on Sunday, April 7th. All the details, including the link to join and our monthly chat, can be found in the Geneva app, which you can access by clicking the link in the show note. Quick reminder that all books mentioned can also be found in today's show note. Thanks so much for listening to the episode, and wishing you a wonderful reading adventure until we meet again. Chat soon.